In a strange way, the labor market failing to be a market at all when it went digital was part of the reason it didn't recognize that it had stopped being a market at all when it went digital. It's the circular logical fallacy of the thing, the collapse of perspectives, kind of like Bonhoeffer. I don't listen to job seekers because job seekers aren't worth listening to, so I don't listen to job seekers. Yeah? The very act of becoming a closed mental loop that wasn't actually a market but a farce of a market meant that it couldn't recognize that it was a closed mental loop, not a market but a farce of a market. The people in power were able to delude themselves into thinking they still were operating a market, partly because the people without power had no capacity to change the market that they were forced to be a part of by virtue of needing to eat. But the very act of them being unable to change the market meant that it was not a market at all, because that's not how markets work. Markets have supply and demand. The very act of them being unable to change that market meant in and of itself it wasn't a market. It's the evidence. And thus the global labor force faced economic conscription into the worst version of American Idol. When you get inscripted into the talent service industry, you don't get paid, you get shamed, and it's a lottery to find out whether or not you'll ever escape. All the while, the global economy and the national economies eroded. Economic income inequality grew, and civic democracy degraded, as well as fascism rose. Because oligarchy is where fascism comes from, and the obedience economy that was driven by the online labor market is training in isolated submission to an authority that you cannot stop or fight back against. That's my read. I think online hiring has been one of the greatest examples of psychological and financial warfare in modern history.